GM. Welcome back to another episode of Web3 Academy, a place where entrepreneurs, business professionals, and creators can learn how to use Web3 to build thriving communities and sustainable business models. I'm Jay Bird, and today I've got with me Adam Cata from NFT Tech. Today we're breaking down how to turn fans into members with NFTs at some of the largest sporting events in the world. We're going to talk about the intersection of Web3 and IP. How do sporting events and movies and entertainment, which own these massive pieces of IP, some legacy IP, some new IP, how do you use that IP to more engage your super fans? And how does that lead to mainstream Web3 adoption? We also break down the AO Artball project. This project was the world's first Web3 project to incorporate live match data, and it won an Entertainment Cannes Lions Award for sport. Huge accomplishment for a Web3 project to win an award at Cannes in this manner. So it's really exciting. We break down that project and we talk about really interesting where that project started over a year ago when it was first being built and how it launched in 2022. And then this year, the Australian Open coming up very soon in the next few weeks, what their plans are this year of how they're continuing to offer more value to their holders, and then in which way they are adding new holders, but in a very strategic way where it still offers value to the current holders, but then also allows their membership to grow, but not massively, only slightly. Really interesting to hear about how Adam and his team broke that down. And then we also talk about what it's like to build in Web3, where essentially you're building the ship while sailing the ship. And Adam is very honest with the challenges you face, where sometimes you don't know the answer, but you have to go out and you build and you have to try and you have to learn by doing and learn by trying. And then you go back to the drawing board and you try again and you try again. And it's so inspiring to have a leader like Adam come on the show with so much experience, talk about that. And he talks about that specifically with Elvis. He worked with the Elvis estate on an Elvis Presley NFT, and he talks about the challenges that face and how they've had to reinvent that and where they are now. Really exciting place they're at now with that. Adam brings a wealth of experience to this conversation. So he's the CEO at NFT Tech. Previously, he was the head of partnerships at Decentraland. And before that, he worked at Warner Brothers, managing iconic brands such as Batman, Harry Potter, Superman, and many more. Can't wait for you guys to listen to this show. You're just going to absolutely love it. It's a really, really good deep dive. And yeah, before we get into it, let's just take a minute to hear from our sponsors. Unlock Protocol is the NFT membership protocol for Web3. Content subscriptions, community access, event tickets are all forms of memberships, one of the most common business models for creators and entrepreneurs today. Building an NFT membership opens many new possibilities for your members. Everything from tailored multi-platform experiences to the ability to sell an unfinished subscription on secondary markets. These are things just not possible in Web 2. However, in order for this business model to work, creators need NFTs which are time-bound or have built-in recurring payments. Unlock Protocol does this for your NFTs. Better yet, with a few simple steps, you can create your own NFT contract without code. What WordPress has done for websites, Unlock Protocol is doing for membership NFTs. If you're an NFT creator, you can't rely on royalties as they are likely going to zero. You need recurring revenue. You need Unlock. At Web3 Academy, we believe NFT memberships are the future of business and community. And that's why we decided to build on Unlock. Learn more at unlock-protocol.com. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Really excited to dive into today's show, mainly because I'm a massive sports fan, and one of the biggest projects that you guys have done is on sports. We're not going to start there, but little tease, we're going to talk about the Australian Open and some exciting things that you guys are doing there with AO Artballs later in the show. But let's start off from the beginning of how did you initially fall down the rabbit hole? What got you into Web3? Was it crypto first? Was it Web3 first?
I remember it was a moment in 2012 when a group of friends that are very tech centric told me about Bitcoin. We sort of had this little syndicate going. I think at the time it was super intriguing because there was this digital currency and I sort of started to understand a little bit of it, but my friends were a little deeper than I was. And I'm not a day trader, even a decade later. But through the rise, I kept tabs on different things that were happening. But Ethereum was probably my biggest interest in, and what Vitalik was doing and these smart contracts. I had really no idea until post 2019. I'd taken some time off and I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do next. And I remembered maybe there was this thing that I hadn't spent enough time exploring, but I'd like to understand more, which was the smart contract side of Ethereum and understanding what these punks and these crypto kitties were doing all around my Twitter feed. So yeah, I like one of my little side hobbies, not many people had known this, but I was interested in coding, but not very good at it, but interested enough in it. So it was a natural thing for me to want to understand more. And there wasn't a lot of information out there about what an ERC 721 was and 1155. There were a lot of people trying to unravel what secondary trailing commissions would mean. And I thought the best way to probably do that was deep dive into a 9-month rabbit hole from there. And I came out the other side meeting some amazing people and being at the right place at the right time, which is like crypto Twitter, specific about NFTs, where we're all unpacking it. And there was lots of different people that were talking, and I was just in the shadows, just listening and reading a hell of a lot every day.
I think what you mentioned about learning, that's the beauty and the joy and also the pain of the industry right now. And you also mentioned time, which getting in 2012, you were early in the space. Clearly decisions were made that you didn't dive in all the way at that point. But it's true, like that's the space that we're in, where every week you feel like you've got something and you understand it and it's right, and then it changes, or some new project comes out that's using that standard in a different way and teaches you something new. And it's just like this, it's an incredible time to be in a revolution and evolution, depending upon which way you look at it, a revolution of the internet, an evolution of ownership. It's just so much fun to be in that space.
It was always about how that transition into the digital world would work, and also how the digital world could then mesh with our physical lives, in many ways. And being able to have virtual worlds like Decentraland and seeing how 3D environments would engage different people and what that meant to then how that would look across different types of projects and engaging with those fans in different types of ways. I think a lot of people see it as like this digital notion of like, well, it's only relevant to me if I'm on the internet. And I think Web3 and the metaverse is a lot larger than just the internet, but we've also got a really amazing opportunity to rewrite what the internet was meant to be. I think we can all agree that what was probably promised and what's been delivered thus far is far from what I think we had all imagined it to be, from my side.
What you're sort of touching on is the centralization that has occurred as a result of Web 2. And we have these massive centralized companies that basically we are the product now, and they're selling us as the product to advertisers, and a user should never be the product. That creates an unfortunate flywheel for a business where they're just trying to figure out algorithms to grab more of your data and more of your attention and then sell you more things. And that's not what we want as humans. That's never, that's
or just at least have the choice, right? At least have the choice, I think. And I think at this point in time, our wings are clipped in some ways. But yeah, it was just so interesting to sort of see the rise of how people were connecting with NFTs. I had a front row seat with Decentraland, looking after partnerships there. Any brand that was coming through the space for 2 years, it was explaining what an NFT was, what a marketplace was, and then how that all fit into a virtual world like Decentraland, which is just so much larger than just a platform in my eyes. Like the ethos of decentralization, not one sole entity owning it. Go deep into how that's structured. But yeah, I think that really just led me down this garden path, and I've been able to bring in some of my closest friends, and we've seen the highs, and now we're dealing with a challenging market, but super inspired to build really great things. You sort of touched on it before. It was like new case studies are developed every day of maybe what to do and what not to do. And we sort of see our purpose in making sure that there's a reason for the products that we do and deliver to exist, and also to add value in many different ways, not just on floor price. And I think that's the thing here. There's the fundamentals of Web3 is so exciting. If you strip it all back, and that's what still gets me up out of bed and really inspires me when I see different types of technology that is leveraging the blockchain and the ecosystem that just make things so much better and more efficient than what we've had to deal with before.
Yeah, just because you mentioned floor price, I just have to touch on that quickly. It's somewhat unfortunate that as a result of ownership being a core tenant to Web3, it has enabled massive speculation, which has created a market that has led the media to be able to wag their finger and point at $100,000 monkey pictures and say, what's going on over here? So it's led to a lot of headlines. And then also the fact that there's just been this crazy rise and fall of the markets. It's led to a lot of headlines, which I think have scared people and pushed a lot of people away. And obviously, what you don't understand, it's easier to say no to that. I'm curious to know, actually, for you guys, you work with so many of the top brands in the world. We talk a lot about on the show about language that you use and how you have to be careful about, NFT. It's not a word you should be using. And we look all the time at the large Web2 companies that are coming into the space, and you look at Reddit and how successful they were, and they called them digital avatars. Or you look at Instagram and they call them digital collectibles. Or you look at Nike and their .swoosh program and they're calling them virtual creations. And so when you meet with the various brands that you've worked with, I think you worked with Elvis Presley's estate on an Elvis NFT. I think you worked with Sotheby's on their metaverse experience. You've worked with the Australian Open. You've worked with Coca-Cola, Samsung. What's your entry pitch to them? Like, where do you start with them?
I think part of it is going through a risk management plan with them. It's even surprising in a market like this. We've just come back from a sports conference in Madrid where a lot of different rights holders are there. It's a Web2 conference, which I loved. It's really refreshing. And they're super intrigued and interested about how they can connect to their communities and how they can use Web3 to continue to power on those communities themselves. The challenge that we've always seen is that some brands are super risk averse, and we've lost out on certain things because we've had challenges around what blockchain they can use and how long that build would take to create, and a merge for Ethereum would exist. Why would we want to go to another carbon neutral or carbon friendly blockchain because of those reasons? Like, some of the brands have their challenges internally and they're led by certain members that probably shouldn't be there. And then you've got people like Tennis Australia that are just unbelievably awesome and led by great people and have great people that want to push the boundaries of what they can do. And we like that side of it, and we're very particular in who we were able to work with if they're open to being able to be open enough to be able to push those boundaries to set new precedents and benchmarks with us, but it's a mixed bag, to be honest.
I want to jump into Tennis Australia and Australian Open in a second, but before we do, it's interesting here. So you were just at a conference, and here we are in bear market. FTX happened recently, unfortunately. And you're saying that these legacy brands or these sporting events are interested in learning about Web3, and they're still talking about it. That's so great to hear.
Yeah, it was really refreshing, because at some point you do start to wonder how far everything that's happened in the last 6 months has impacted the trajectory of where we were heading and where it is now. And FTX had happened. Sam hadn't been put in jail just yet, because that obviously was recent news. But they've seen the crypto crash, they've seen NFTs rise and fall, and you'd start to think that, is it too hard basket, or how far have they sort of reserved their judgment on when they want to enter? And it's not a race to get something out anymore, I don't think, but it's more so like they're still very much interested in how they can play in the space. And yeah, I left there feeling really great about where things were, because at the end of the day, these rights holders, if it's for a sporting code, which was in this particular case, hold the power and the keys to hundreds of millions of people. And that's what inspires us in a lot of ways. From an NFT tech standpoint, we're here to try and onboard the next 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 million plus into the space with purposeful projects, products, and tools and teams. I think part of it is from the studio side of it, Run Up Wild, which is the studio that I founded. We were just a team that were wanting to create awesome projects and have real purpose to those projects. So knowing that our time and our energy, the resources that are invested into delivering these things is not only well spent, but appreciated wider than what we probably thought, which is like that Australian Open Artball. I know that we'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's basically a case study that's shown how sport and their fans can engage in ways that are just not updating their profile picture on Twitter. And I think that's a really special thing to being part of.
Yeah, okay, well, we've teased it enough. Let's jump into AO Artball. And let's start from the beginning. Set the context for us. How did this project first come about, and why did it come about? And then maybe you can explain what the project is.
I met Ridley and Tennis Australia's Web3 advisor, Steph from Rare Things, in a call about how they might look at virtual worlds specific to Decentraland. And they'd had an NFT project in mind that they were going with Suite, which is like a platform that basically creates digital collectibles, and it's fiat on ramp. Like it's very much built around experiences, and their hope was to merge those experiences in IRL, their event. And we're talking about these virtual worlds, and I just knew something like this was so interesting that if they were able to take a chance on us coming back to them with a quick little creative brief that we could come up with, that maybe there would be something awesome there. And we started to sketch out a few things as a team and came back to them. They started to like where we were going. Ridley from Tennis Australia, he's a fellow DJ in many ways. So it was great to have a champion internally where talking about Ethereum and dynamic NFTs and how we could then play within real-time data from the sport event could combine to something pretty engaging. And the only challenge that we had was that this came through our inbox, and these conversations probably started at the end of October, and January 14th wasn't too far away. I will always have so much deep respect for the team to have gone through Christmas and New Year's the way that they did. I ended up getting COVID myself, so I was out of action for the first week of Jan, basically like taking Forbes interviews with Nick. That was so sweaty at 2 a.m. in the morning, stuck in Australia and during COVID. But we started to workshop these ideas and became like a daily thing to try and fast track. And David Port, our creative director, and Nick, our creative technologist, Louis, our creative lead, to work this project, it just, when you're onto something when it clicks. And when we worked out that we could get access to Hawkeye data, which is basically made all referees outside of the main referee of tennis completely redundant. So it's side calling technology. You can reference exactly where a ball has been bounced. So we came up with this concept where we'll split the court up into equal tiles. Each tile will be represented by a unique tennis ball, a one of a kind tennis ball, but really it's about the coordinate in the court. And we could capture in real time the data of the last legal bounce of every match winning point. And there's over 440 of them in the Grand Slam across mixed doubles and et cetera, et cetera. And it sort of led us down this path again. It was just like, holy, it was exciting because we started to look at this thing where there was art in the technology, there was art in its representation, and there was art in the way that we could sort of start to engage with tennis fans and sports fans around the globe, where you could own this tile on a court that was represented by this one-of-a-kind ball, and you could end up having a match-winning point from the women's or men's singles final and other matches too. And we ended up deciding on a number of 6,776. There's a bit of a tennis play in that, romantic when it comes to Web3, and I think marketing also comes in line with that. So we built the smart contract that was fully dynamic. So every time.
Wait, what is the romantic number?
So in tennis, so 6776 insinuates that the first game was tiebreak, and the second game was that too, and you're now leading into the third and final set.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's split one game apiece or one set apiece,
So
and you
there's
only
so many
need
ways to
that.
interpret
Yeah,
it, but
yeah.
all of these things were decided at the 11th hour of every day. It was like so crazy. We've got this many tiles. We could make it this size here. Do we do it to 11,000? Do we do? And I think Tennis Australia, Ridley in particular, because at the time, like this wasn't even his true role. He's now leading all of this. But at the time, like he was just, yeah, we had to work, like we had to get things happening. So he was funneling in all the approvals to Tennis Australia. There was terms and conditions, terms of sale, lawyers on both sides of the fence trying to work through games of chance, game of skill. You know, how does it all work? How do the rewards happen? And basically, if you ended up winning like a championship tile, like so having a match winning point from any of the 8 final matches, so mixed doubles, mixed women, so many different tournaments, you ended up getting the physical ball from that game,
Oh,
which
really?
was
Oh, wow.
authenticated. So it sold out super quick at a time when NFTs were definitely on the way down. We announced it 3 days out from the tournament because we built this thing in 10 weeks. You could reference on the side like a 2D version of where your NFT was placed in the court. The creative was amazing. And then we had this virtual world that we partnered with Vegas City from Decentraland on to build. And you could go and watch Practice Court 3, which I thought was really cool because it was this broadcast stream basically that you couldn't get on TV. And you could go into Decentraland and watch it. And there was classic matches happening every day and lots of different things. You ended up getting all these things. But for me, like there was this 24-hour camera that just didn't turn off, and you would see security guards or the shadows of them walking around at certain points depending on your time zone.
It's like behind the scenes, right? Like that's what the super fans want, right? Like the biggest fans, they want that extra access, which I think is a big thing that NFTs allow, right? Is you have your super fans over here and you give them extra access, whether it be virtual access or physical access or access to partner events, or there's so much you can do with that.
And that's like the success of the Artball and selling out and doing the volume that we did and like having the community that we have. Over the last 9 months, we've done so much market research. We've continued to talk to the community about different things and how we plan it. We've taken our learnings specifically around not doing something in 10 weeks, even though right now we keep building because it's just naturally what we do. And we won this Bronze Lion, which is a highly regarded advertising award out of Cannes Festival. And the fact that I look at what we're building today for AO23 and it's like child's play, and that's nothing to take offense against. So you've just mentioned, imagine a token gated site that now gives you a whole heap of viewing power that someone on free to air or cable television doesn't get to see. Imagine those 2D environments that we're able to see where the ball was placed. We can now see that completely virtually play out as a rally online. You know, like there's just so many cool things that we've been able to add, build and explore. And now it's become a membership where, you know, anyone that owns an Artball gets a 7-day pass to the second week of the Grand Slam, and international fans can still engage in all this unique content that they can get that they just don't otherwise. And we keep building these case studies, and like I'm sure we're going to learn a hell of a lot more in this one. And we've got so many plans for even the year after and how it all sort of works and how it's scaled. It's been a lot of fun to be part of, and like it takes 300 Spartans to make it to work, but the reality is probably like 18 of us just focused on making it go. But I think the biggest thing for us was that we went in, we hadn't put a lot of thought to how to scale it moving forward, and we had a fresh breath of air straight after the Australian Open. And we're really, really proud of how this is now a scalable project, not only across the Australian Open as a sporting code, but for fans. So I think anyone that owns an Artball today continues to get re-rolled. They never have to buy in. I'm like, personally, I love provenance. I think that's one of the most powerful assets to a smart contract. NFTs in a wallet through one collection or one brand, I feel is a waste in many ways. And by owning this Artball in 22 means that you continue to get re-rolled every year. The tiles in the court get slightly smaller. There's a small allocation of public.
I was going to ask that. So you are, for 23, you are releasing new tiles as well?
Yes, so there's definitely under 2,500. There's a lot of
Okay.
numbers in my head at the moment, but the court sort of expands to 9,400 odd,
Okay.
maybe a bit more. 9,000
So,
plus
so if I
tiles.
already have one, I get a new tile.
Yeah,
And I saw that you use Chainlink's random verifier to ensure that I get a random spot, right? So it's
which I
not,
think is the
if I got
coolest thing about
last,
Web3, right?
right?
Like
Yeah.
the things that like really mean a lot to us. I don't think a lot of people care about them, but for
I don't think
us,
many people care about that. Yeah, no.
no,
But
but
that's,
like I think it's super powerful. Like, there's no human fingerprint to say that
Mhm.
I or anyone else controlled the destiny of this art ball. What tile on the court it was, how it was generated as an art piece. And then you think about the match winning side of it, it's like that tile was randomly allocated to you. And then by some chance, it ends up being a potential match winning point in with a last legal bounce in next year's
yeah.
tournament and the years forward. So yeah,
And I
we're
just got to
really
say
proud of.
one thing there that I think really caught my attention about your project is I think a lot of people would say, okay, so I get a tile on a tennis court, like, so what? But here's what people are missing until you own something is once you own something that is dynamic and changes as things occur to it, you get invested in that. This might be a bit of an extreme example, but that's the equivalent of your child or of your house or of your property, like things that you own that you do things with that change and they grow over time and you can see something change. And in the case of the AO Artball, it's if the final match point landed there, then my NFT changes and looks different. Like that is something that until you experience it, until you've purchased your first NFT and you've had that feeling happen for you, I don't think you fully grasp what that does to you. It's exciting. It's worth celebrating. It's a big deal. And so, like, it was one thing that really stood out to me.
No, there's a lot of Web3 principles into even how the smart contract is optimized and other things that I'll probably bore you with. And I agree with you. I think it's a moment in time that you've been part of in many ways. And I think engaging with sports fans in this particular way that's unique, it's not too far stretch from fantasy leagues and other things that they're probably associated with as well. And yeah, I think for us, it's a multi-year project and how we're planning to build it out. It's really exciting. This is just, I think, where people sort of need to recognize is that crypto and blockchain, the principles of it, how they work with enterprise and IP rights holders and other things. It's not only building case studies for the whole industry, it's also building internal case studies for these teams that are taking a chance and building things out too. And you know, this project that was meant to be just a digital dynamic NFT, by just, I mean, its purpose initially was to engage people in the tournament itself. It's turned into a membership that can then, you know, reward people with physical tickets. It can then reward people with digital access. It can reward people potentially with consumer products in time that are unique to their journey through the project itself, to even imagine being able to reward match winning points in a bigger and larger way than just a physical tennis ball from the match. I think that's the part that's really special in this, is when you can grow with a project and take suggestions and build with them. You can get lost in the mayhem of this volatile market, but there are moments in time where working on projects like this that allow us to sort of reflect on what the possibilities may look like in a few years' time. And that's definitely exciting to think about.
Did you find when you launched AO Artballs, do you have an indication of who purchased? Was it more Web3 native, or was it more of an onboarding ramp and it was more like Australian Open fans who maybe this was their first crypto or first NFT?
I always get misquoted with this, but I think there was 17% were first-time NFT
Wow. Okay.
holders. Yeah, and
That's
we did.
considerable.
Yeah, and like I think it was close to 70% of the holders were unique to each other as well, which is super high in a project, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is the part that I love, the fact that people had a great experience the first time. I know what we're building, and I'm so excited for people to see this next installment and what else is in plan for this. But it's also great to have been used as a case study to open people's entities' minds to what could be explored, and it can be a lot more than just what it is. And I think live broadcasts and other things are definitely opportunities for how a broadcast partner can engage, in particular with their fans who are watching, and a project similar to the Artball where you can see all this other content as well as part of it, like this online lottery, which then rewards people for watching in different ways. And there's so much under the hood and so many different prospects. I think my theme at the moment is just time. I wish we had more time in everything. In the way that the merge could have happened sooner, they're like all these different things, but at the same time, I think they're all learnings, and they're also time that's needed to continue to build and do things. I think this moment in time that we're looking at now is something that I was very bullish, like weirdly bullish going into, pre the FTX announcement on November 6th or 8th or whatever. So, and I know that this has pushed us back a bit, but I think with great builders, with great people, we can continue to respect where the technology is, creatively, like really push it to engage more people and build purpose around it. It doesn't have to be sold as an NFT, like you were right before. Part of the risk management is like, don't release a project that isn't strong. Like, be held accountable to that, and we sure do. We've learned a lot through different types of ones that we're building and developing. Elvis is for one that has changed multiple times to try and get right. And I think we've really hit it on the head now, where we're building a project that is helping a situation and a challenge that an everyday audience experiences as a fan. They've got no voice as a fan. It's, especially with Elvis, there's just like tens of millions of fans around the world.
Huge.
And it's but they're also disconnected because there's all these micro fan bases with fan bases that are based out of Facebook. They all want the same thing. They want to protect the legacy. They want to potentially crowdfund money to buy back rights or have access to unreleased content. But over the last decades, they've just failed every time to try and do this. And that just screams a doubt. And working with the estate is like, how do you make that for the everyday person and engage on so many different Web3 principles to make it really fun and engaging as well? And I think the Legacy Council, which is what the project is, like, and it's changed and it's evolved and it's morphed. It's a really powerful tool. It allows people as fans to have a voice and to collectively vote, and a treasury that's there and be all under one roof. It's not perfectly decentralized, but it's as close as you're going to be able to get, working with an official licensed property and an estate that have their own brand assurance guidelines to deal with things. And, personally, I love it because it's like a fully on-chain project, meaning there's no IPFS. It's all in the code of the smart contract, the image, and it will last as long as the humankind does, I think, at this point in time, or as long as Ethereum exists, which is probably as long as the humankind exists, which I think is really cool. No one else will care once again about that. But,
you make a great point about community and sub-communities, and that is really at the core of what Web3 allows a business to do, is to give ownership to your communities and to bring these communities together in a more organized way and allow them to coordinate while being complete strangers, without even knowing each other, without even knowing each other's name, just often knowing pseudo anon names, but you can still connect and you can still coordinate by using a DAO. And I think that this opportunity to further develop communities, which you make a great point. So many of those communities, in the case of like Elvis, are just Facebook groups. There might be the London Elvis fans and then the Dubai Elvis fans, and it's every city in the world probably has one.
Some have like hundreds of fans to some of those other Facebook groups that have hundreds of thousands, and like they're all under the same roof.
It's a great lens through which to look at Web3 is if you have IP that has fandom communities that you are maybe not a part of, which is often the case right now. And most of these communities, unfortunately, are likely Facebook groups. So get them off Facebook and get them onto some other platform as soon as you can. But this is an opportunity where you can empower those communities in new ways by using Web3. So it's so interesting that you guys thought about Elvis in that way.
But it took time, like the project itself.
You had to test it first, right?
Yeah, totally. And then you change it again. And I think there was this gold rush, and a lot of different people were either copying or cloning projects. It reminded me of the ICO days of 2016,
Mm-hmm,
2017.
mm-hmm.
You know, like, but I think the technology that we have in front of us is a huge responsibility to the communities as well. When a holder expects a large enterprise to be able to move mountains quickly,
Mm-hmm.
is I think it's slightly naive to think about the fact that they're actually the case study to prove to the rest of the thousands to tens of thousands of people that the brand can exist in this way. And we see the responsibility in making sure that the tech is secure, it's creative, and it really hits on a purpose. And I think as a collective, us, the IP, the community that are there, and it's a large stretch to get right. And it's not always going to be right. But
Mm-hmm.
as a collective, we would like to think that we can work through them, we can learn from these different parts. That's internal, that's external, and we can continue to work through what it may look like. Because I guarantee you, what we see today and how it's going to look, who would have thought like something like the QR code a decade ago would be as accessible as it is today, to the point that I can use it as a login? It required an app. It was like pretty clunky and didn't really have its own purpose outside of redirecting you to a website.
Mm-hmm.
But now it authenticates things for me. It signs me into
Mm-hmm.
different things. And I think this technology today for Web3 just has a huge amount of evolution. I really do hope that there's so many amazing people building and creating things, and there's amazing community members that are doing so many great things as well. The financially driven degens that are talking about the fact that royalty rates shouldn't exist because they're looking at it from a financial gain perspective of flipping an NFT. I think we've got to really flip that mindset to be the fact that you don't really want to flip your NFT because it gives you enough of a purpose or enough value in being able to hold it. But those secondary trailing commissions and the royalties are a large part to bring on IP into the space and connect, because there would be a lot more companies out there that, if this existed a couple of decades ago, they probably exist today in many ways, where I think that there's so many principles in Web3 that are so powerful to brands, IP holders, and communities alike.
You bring up something there that sort of triggers a question in me that I just have to ask. Is, you mentioned royalties, and obviously we're in a current state where a lot of marketplaces are doing zero royalties or low royalties, and we don't need to get into the royalty debate. There's a lot happening there. And then you also mentioned memberships and how AO Artball is turning into a membership. And one thing I really struggle with, and I think a lot of us do, is what's the revenue model for this if there is zero royalties? So I'm just curious if you have insight, and maybe this is more of a question for Ridley and Tennis Australia, but how are they giving out on the ground tickets to 6,776 people? I guess maybe they assume that lots of those holders are international. They might not come to the Australian Open. So maybe there's only like a 20%.
But there's more expenses that, like I won't be able to give away too much. It might actually be announced by the time this comes out. But there are other expenses that are aligned with this too, in terms of further utility than that may reward match winning points. Like trailing commissions makes a lot of that happen. The scalable approach for Artball has a primary sale each year that doesn't oversaturate the collection. It continues to build. But the principle of it comes down to royalties. And I think a lot of it, in terms of the brands and the IP that we work with, have a strategy around royalties themselves. I think what people sort of don't recognize is that in time, and we're exploring this in real time, and I know a lot of others are too, is that we will be able to define those that have paid royalties and those that haven't. So those that want the full utility access in the future, they may be wary enough that they will have to pay the royalty to receive those benefits, right? I think where someone can go and sell today, and like decentralized marketplaces will exist. It was one of the red flags that I saw when I was learning about a sale contract versus a smart contract on a platform and how collections were there. No one really wanted to talk about it 2 years ago. And here we are today with a number of different marketplaces that are centered around revenue making opportunities for holders, totally fine. Like, I don't have any problem with that there. But I think the pressure around the feedback from lots of different creators that see huge value in royalties and what that means to their own business model. And on the other side, you've got these holders that see these as financial assets that they want to receive a gain from. There's a blend of both worlds. And I think it will take more time to build out, but it will get there. But I still feel uneasy about one specific marketplace holding an asset that can just be sold only on their marketplace to receive royalties with as well. It's not this whole, like OpenSea, for instance, for future collections. But I think there's a lot to be explored in this. I just don't think the risk associated to volume should be associated with the power of what trailing commissions is to creators and brands. And I think we can't get lost in that. That's the thing that really connected my interests in our current world. And with physical product, the challenge is there, and it's always been hard to maintain. But this within digital trading on the blockchain, it enables something that's super powerful. So why discredit it? Completely. I think we should be working out ways to make sure that it lives. And I think that also comes down to people seeing value in paying the royalty.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if I know that I'm going to get value for paying my royalty because of the membership and the utility, which is going to be the case as part of all these memberships, then you're going to pay it, right? And also as the UX improves, and it's clear to me, like I think one of the main problems right now is that people don't even know if they're paying royalties or not sometimes, right? Because just the way these marketplaces are, and marketplaces are adjusting and getting better at presenting that. Like Blur is a great example. They've done a really good job at showing you that this is the royalty you're paying and this is why you're paying it. And you can choose the different royalty. Like they're showing you that, right? So, but
totally. But that's what I imagine in time you want to claim your Australian Open 7-day pass, right? And it's not going to happen for this year, but for us, it's important for AO23 holders and the rest. If you go and try and claim your ticket or try and get access to what we're calling the super site, which is the token gated broadcast streams that are exclusive to holders, and you can't gain access because that token ID hasn't paid the royalty. You've got the option as a holder to either sell it and allow someone else to pay it, or you can just top up and get paid. And I think that there is where some of the solution can be, and that's what we're looking at and exploring. There are others that we've seen, and I think writing it hard code, it's just into a smart contract and limiting marketplaces is another band-aid. I think we need to look at it more macro than that. And there's some really great minds out there that are exploring lots of different things. And I just don't think we should lose faith in what the royalty stands for. No matter if you're a creator, a brand, or a holder in a collection, there is a place for it. And I do think that it's worth the fight. So, and I do think, I could talk about this for days, to be honest, but
me too.
But I think it's such an interesting play. I remember reading all about it and just seeing how many people it looks rare, and that crowd mentality around not having royalties and their decisions to then support that to help their own volume trading. And then seeing on the other side, all the creators step up and they're the ones you got to listen to.
Yeah. And also we're in an unfortunate position right now where most of the people playing in the space are flippers and traders, right? I think you made a good point too. What is likely to happen long-term is that you're not buying an NFT. We need to stop using that word. You're buying a membership, right? And just the same as you used to buy a membership in the past, the what is the same. The how is what is different now, right? How that membership works and what it offers you is different than what it did before because of the tech behind it. And so most likely in the future, you likely won't sell your membership. You'll keep your membership because you value it. And so we're going to have way less flippers in the future. It's just right now. But
that's the whole point. Yeah, totally. And that's the thing is how do we continue to onboard more people into the space because they see a purpose in a project that they're wanting to buy into is, what probably keeps us up at night and also keeps us pushing through the weekend and delivering things through. There's so many different interesting things that are going to play out. Like I spent a lot of time reading over the terms and conditions of the Apple Store and their updates. And, that's not great. And then we need to work through what that means, because the smartphone to the internet was such an accelerator. And Android phones, is this the opportunity for them as a piece of hardware to continue to push and take market share? Who knows? But there's lots of different things that we're going to be working out over the next few years, and it's definitely not going to be perfect. But if we can continue to just push boundaries and inspire others around us and keep people honest and have people keep us honest through it, we're going to end up okay. Like, I know that it's just going to take some time.
Yeah, completely. I like it. Let's focus on inspiring others. Okay, I know that we got to wrap up because you've got to get going. But before we do, give a little bit of a shill on where can people get involved in AO Artballs, and maybe a little bit of a shill on how they can find you and find NFT Tech.
Yeah, for sure. Look, with the Australian Open, follow the handle AO Metaverse on Twitter. Artball is the project itself. It'll be in the link tree there. You can search and buy on secondary, or if it's time for primary mint, there's opportunity to take place there as well.
You guys have a date on the AO23 mint?
It'll be early Jan at this point in time. So yeah, and NFT Tech is a publicly listed entity. It's on the Canadian Stock Exchange. It has the ticker NFT, and we've got plans to do a whole heap of different things. So you can find us on the NEO Exchange in Canada, and it's also available in Europe and on the OTT in the US. Follow NFT Tech on Twitter as well. And then myself personally, like, weirdly, I use LinkedIn to connect to different people, and I feel like that sort of helps filter my business networks and keeps my email inbox and my Slack relatively manageable, even though every time I open up Telegram, it gives me some serious anxiety. But yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, like Adam Cata, DE_CATA. I don't do much on Twitter, but I do read a lot. So I don't think I've made a reply or a comment. I am waiting for my big entrance into the space at some point in time. I don't know if that's weighing me down at all, but yeah, that's another challenge.
You can't do it all. You can't do it all. If you're on LinkedIn, that's LinkedIn, Twitter, Telegram. Like, we can't keep track of all these, so you got to pick and battles. That's for sure. I appreciate that. Okay, awesome. I'll include all those links in the show notes so you listeners can check them out. Before we wrap, we'd love to just do a quick speed round. Couple of questions coming at you, Adam. First question: what's an NFT you'll never sell?
The MetaKey edition 2. I remember, so I was a big fan of Matty. So DCL Blogger is his Twitter handle, a fellow Australian as well. And I remember following him in the early days of Virtual Land, and then seeing him go into NFTs and reading a lot on what he was writing. And he launched this program that it was called the MetaKey. And I saw it as a loyalty program of sorts and a membership when none of that really existed. And I was able to get whitelisted on Artifacts CloneX from the fact that I had an Artifact MetaKey NFT, and I've got a lot to thank for that, and the whole process and what MetaKey is. I think, I don't think I'll ever sell it. Although, a slight dig, I did buy the edition 4s for the whole Run It Wild team, because a lot of people that we hire, just amazing people that are intrigued enough about Web3, but they're just great at what they do. And like, I know part of the process is getting a wallet and having an NFT and experiencing it. And I think MetaKey is a great way to do that. But there was one employee that we had, and a dear friend of mine, Lucian, and I remember gifting him an edition too, because it was early with me at that stage. And it did remind me that he's if he ever does get married, I'm never giving him a present, because he ended up selling it. So, and it was before the Artifact. So shame on him. Yeah, exactly right. But, I don't let him down on that side. Yeah. I don't know. That's a whole nother discussion again. If you give someone an NFT, do you expect them to sell it or not? It's like, ultimately it's their choice. But yeah, anyway.
Okay. One thing you've purchased recently for under $100 that brings you joy. Doesn't have to be digital.
Yeah. I got a steam mop the other day. It was
really
under $100. A steam mop. So no detergent. We've got tiles in our house, and it's just really changed my perspective on efficiency and cleaning, and like it was a Black Friday sale. So I'd say that
is amazing. I'm actually quite interested in that because I've got a really dusty house right now.
There's no bucket needed.
Wow.
Bacteria is 99% clear because of the steam. Thing dries in minutes.
I've never heard of it.
Steam mop. We've got like you can, like there's plenty of them out there.
I gotta check these out.
Yeah.
And under $100.
It was Black Friday sale, so like I think I did well. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be something on Amazon.
I'll get the Boxing Day sale. Okay, last question. If you had a billboard that 1 billion people were going to see, what would you write on it?
So there's a project that we're working on with an amazing artist called Alex Trocher, and we haven't talked about it yet to anyone, but a little bit of alpha on this, because every time I think of a billboard, I think of this. We've created a AR app that is fully token gated. So imagine being able to see a billboard and what it has and what it's represented only if you hold a particular NFT. I think that's super powerful to have something that is forever changing or forever unique, or like a secret society that see things differently from others that don't naturally look like what they do when to the naked eye. So yeah, I'm more intrigued about what you can do with the billboard rather than what it says on it. Yeah.
So it's AR is what you said. It's AR.
Yeah, so think of it like an augmented reality
physical billboard that I'm like looking through my phone.
Through your phone. Yeah.
Augmented reality. And if I hold an NFT, I see something on the billboard that others don't.
Correct.
Wow. Cool.
That would be unique to you. And that doesn't have to just be a billboard, but I think that there's some really powerful things around this. Hopefully no one steals this idea and goes live with it sooner. It was a lot harder to make the AR app than we initially thought in terms of how it would be associated to each token ID. And because it's through the browser and not an application as well, it was like, it's been a lot. But I think allowing people to see things differently, even in IRL, through assets that you have in hardware that just change reality is, I think, a really cool thing. Yeah,
fascinating. Ooh, that's exciting. Might have to have you back on the show to talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, man. Adam, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for the time. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge, and thanks for inspiring. We appreciate builders like you in the space. It's great to have people that are just playing in the sandbox and figuring it out as you go and not afraid to try things.
Thanks, man. It's been great to have a chat.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have an awesome day.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.